My name is Theresa Ofstad. I am a community educator with the Alzheimer's Association. I'm also a support group facilitator. Many of our support group attendees are here live with us today. So again, thank you so much for joining. The reason that I am a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association, I know some of you know my story, many of you do not. When I was 8 years old, I watched my grandmother valiantly battle a disease she had no way of winning. And I watched our family of six struggle to care for her to the point where, as the disease progressed, we needed to put her in a memory care facility. And I know that's something a lot of people struggle with, but I truly saw that being the best place for my grandmother. And I know everyone is different, but I saw how she thrived, not only with the care, but the support, the socializing, the activities, and all of that. And she would have the biggest smile on her face when we would visit. So for our family, that was the right choice. I do wear my purple pin in memory of my grandmother for the Walk to End Alzheimer's. But then fast forward a few years ago when my dad started showing signs. That's when I knew, okay, my grandmother had it. My dad's now showing signs. I need to learn everything that I can, not only to help my dad, but also to try to prevent it from myself and future generations. So I did join the Alzheimer's as the community educator, as I mentioned, support group facilitator. And this last year, I jumped full speed ahead. I started joining the advocacy team. We've gone to Sacramento. We've gone to Washington, D.C. to advocate for people with dementia and the caregivers that help provide care for them. And then I also joined the Walk to End Alzheimer's committee. So we'll share a little bit more about those things and the resources from the Alzheimer's Association towards the end of our program today. And there will be time for Q&A. So people at home, go ahead and put in the chat or Q&A feature any questions that you may have throughout the program. There's going to be a couple of tests you can answer in that chat feature as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today's presentation is from the Alzheimer's Association. It is part of our Empowered Caregiver series. It's a 5-part series. You can take them all. You can take individual ones. Today's is about communicating effectively. Yes, please. Thank you so much. Yeah, got a little extra noise here in live, so we're making one more adjustment there. Thank you for that. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is a 5-part series. Here's some of the other presentations available. And our learning objective for today is going to be to explain how Alzheimer's affects communication. We're going to describe how a person-centered approach can help with communication. I'm going to list some strategies to help you communicate well with the person living with dementia. And we'll identify some ways to improve communication with family, friends, and healthcare professionals. So what is communication? Communication is the way that we tell people about what we want and need. It is how you share your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's how we connect with each other, and it can be verbal or it can be nonverbal. We'll go into that a little bit more. So first, we're going to do a knowledge check. So go ahead and put in the chat here what you think, which one of these you think would be the right answer. So which of the following are ways that people can communicate? Can they, by talking and listening, by attitude and tone of voice, facial expressions and body language, or all of the above? Here in the room, what do you think? Yes, awesome. We have a very smart group with us today. Communication does come from our words, attitudes, tone of voice. It also comes from our face and body movements, and it includes listening, which can sometimes be more important even than talking. You know, what did you hear? You have 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? You learned that in elementary school. Sometimes listening is the best in this situation. But with dementia and communication, we'll go into some of the things that affect somebody living with dementia. Alzheimer's and other dementias do cause brain damage. It's damaging the cells in their brain. So these changes can affect the way that we think, our memory, some of the things that we do, and the way we're able to communicate. Communication changes are caused by the disease and the effect of the disease. It's not the person wanting to change, it's what's happening in their brain. So we have to remind ourselves of that, because as caregivers, it gets very frustrating. And I know we're going to go through some examples, but we have to remind ourselves the person is not choosing to be this way. It's the way their brain is affecting them. Okay. Especially as it progresses and changes. So changes vary from person to person. There are many people with the same diagnosis, but not always the same symptoms. It does affect everyone differently. So the difficulties that they can have is with their words. Sometimes they're trying to remember what they're trying to say. They can't think of the word. So then they might start using their body language or pointing to something, or maybe eventually describing it, or, just not able to come up with that description. They will repeat themselves often. They will repeat the questions, but they'll also repeat statements over and over and over and over again. So I think we've all experienced that here in this room. And so again, we have to just take a deep breath and remind ourselves it's not them wanting to repeat, it's the way their brain is functioning. So we are also want to describe, oftentimes, as I mentioned, they want to describe an item when they can't think of the word. They may forget what they're talking about in the middle of a sentence and get completely distracted and move on to something different. They may have difficulty organizing their words in a way that makes sense. They may just say random words instead of a complete sentence, trying to communicate what their thoughts are. They may go back to speaking a native language. If they're used to speaking English and you've gotten used to communicating with them in English, all of a sudden the brain is changing and they may revert to a language that they spoke when they were younger, which you may or may not know. And then, of course, speaking less often, they may start to become introvert, because as they're feeling these changes happening, they may not be as comfortable communicating with you. So they may not speak at all. They may also use hand gestures more than speaking. Again, as I said, pointing to things, or, telling them, hey, I'm using a lot of hand gestures right now, but it becomes more difficult for them to communicate their thoughts. So we want to focus on the person-centered approach. As I said, not everybody experiences the same thing. So we need to think about what you know about the person and adjust how you communicate with them. It is, a lot of people, they may have unique abilities and preferences. They may have a preference on what they're called. We're going to go into detail on that in just a minute, but the approach that you use to communicate with them it needs to be based on what they are comfortable with. So we sometimes have to adjust what we're doing based on what we think may work the best for them. And this approach can help not only you communicate with them, but it will also help calm the tone and calm the reactions of both of you, your frustration and their reaction to things. Number one, we always want to think about treating them with respect and dignity. I know it's not always the case when we're getting frustrated and we just want to scream at the top of our lungs, because it is difficult to communicate, but we have to remember to keep them in mind and always respect what they're, respect them as an individual. You want to use knowledge of what they like and dislike. You want to call them by a preferred name. You don't want to use honey, sweetie, baby, unless maybe that is what they prefer. But you can always ask them if you don't know. And then you want to avoid talking about them as if they're not in the room. They are in the room, and they may not be able to communicate things, but they do have feelings and emotion, and so they want to feel included in the conversation. You want to try to avoid correcting them. I know that's difficult because we're used to communicating with other people in a certain way, but when they start to repeat, it doesn't help either of you to say, oh, you already said this. You've already asked me this question. I've already answered this. You don't need to correct them. There's some great tips that I think we're going to share in the chat a little bit later on how to communicate. And I know several of you in the room have that sheet of examples of conversations that we can be having and how to communicate. We also want to validate their feelings. If they are asking us a question, you don't want to just ignore it. You want to try to address it, but maybe redirect and try to get them to stop repeating the same question over and over again, but you don't want to ignore them either. And oops, I went a little too fast there. The second thing we want to do is include the person, as I mentioned before, in the conversation. You can talk to them directly. You sometimes need to speak more slowly and clearly using a calm tone of voice. Even if you're getting frustrated, just take a deep breath and then try to slow down. You want to acknowledge what they've said. You don't want to ignore them. You want to help them to engage in the conversation in a meaningful way. And so if that means adjusting the way you're speaking or, adjust the conversation in some way that they may understand better, you need to think about those things and have a conversation about family and friends and your lives together, including things that you've done together. It's okay to walk down memory lane with them because sometimes they are forgetting these things and it will help them to reconnect. Third thing, as I mentioned, be patient. It is very difficult to do, and I know it's very frustrating sometimes, but we just need to take a breath. I often say, remember that the only thing you can do is change the way we react to something. You cannot change the way they react to it. You can only help try to guide the situation. So you want to give the person time to decide what they want to say. Again, that brain is not processing everything as the same way it used to. It takes a little extra time. So you want to be able to just give them that time, try to avoid interrupting them, try not to speak for them. You want to give them a choice. Maybe you want to say, would you like to take a bath before or after lunch? Because they need to take a bath, but rather than telling them what they need to do, make them feel like they have a choice. Do they want to do it first or second? And you want to try to connect in that moment. You want to try to limit distractions when you're talking to them. If there's too much going on around them, again, their brain can only process so much at a time. And so you want to try to find a quiet place if you can with less distractions. It's not always possible. You want to try to get the extra noise and visual distractions limited. If you have a TV going, if you have the music up loud, maybe you want to turn that down and just, again, have that face-to-face conversation with them. Having that one-on-one conversation, keeping the conversation simple. You want to turn off or down, as I mentioned, TV, phones. You want to put those things away and just focus on them. And number 5, try to, if need be, you can use nonverbal communication. How does that look? So if with my dad, sometimes he was getting really frustrated and he could not think about the thing he was wanting to say, and he was getting very frustrated. So I would just simply put my hand on his back, pat his back, and say, it's okay, take your time, no problem. Sometimes they need that physical touch to break their thought or to just take the minute and calm down. So you can use positive body language and facial expressions. You can use hand gestures like pointing to an object. You want to make eye contact with them. Use gentle physical contact, as I explained, and use touch, sound, sight, taste, and even smell. Sometimes having aromatherapy in the background can help calm them. So you want to, when their brain is not functioning the same way, sometimes they need to tap into the other senses as well. So we're going to go ahead and hear from 2 caregivers here. I believe the one on the left here is talking about a connection she had with her mom and encouraging the nonverbal communication.
Some of the changes I noticed in the middle stages with mom would be she would start to point to things versus saying them. So, for instance, she had a fascination for airplanes all her life. So we would be driving, and she would just, when she would see one, she would point to the sky. In the early stages, she would say things like, "Oh, the last one for the night that we see, the last airplane." And the middle stages, it was more just pointing. And so when that would happen, I would say, "Oh, there's the last one for the night, Mom," right? So I would be that voice for her at that point. I knew what she meant, and so then I tried to supplement it with some words myself, and then maybe she would actually repeat it or say, say something in regards to that. So then I knew she was engaged in that conversation.
Okay, and then next we're going to hear from a lady who is trying to connect through shared interests with her husband.
When my husband was in the late stage of dementia, I would always sit and talk with him. I would try to use a calm tone of voice. I would always make eye contact, give him hugs, hold his hand. But sometimes it was hard for me to think of new things to tell him. I didn't know if my words were too complex. But one thing that we had always shared was a love of the Harry Potter books. And so I made sure that I always kept a Harry Potter book in his room. And sometimes a visit for us would be holding hands, and I would just read a chapter from a Harry Potter book. And that was actually really connective and important for us because as a couple, we had a lot of memories of reading those stories together. And I also was starting to read those stories with our son. So it felt like this way of making a family memory that I could hold on to and share with both my husband and our son.
So we're going to put this into practice. I'm going to read a scenario. I want you to kind of think about how you might react in this situation. I'll have a question afterwards, and we'll kind of walk through a real life example. So Alonzo's wife, Alicia, is living with Alzheimer's disease and no longer able to get out of bed on her own. Prior to her diagnosis, though, she worked at an elementary school as a librarian. Alicia is no longer able to speak, and Alonzo is having a hard time communicating with her. This is making Alonzo feel less connected with Alicia. So let's think about this scenario. What could Alonzo do to try to communicate with Alicia and stay connected with her? We're going to select two items from below. So if you think on Zoom here that it's number one, put that in the chat, or whichever number you think. Hold Alicia's hand as he tells her what he did that day. Put the radio on in Alicia's room. Read one of Alicia's favorite books to her, or there's nothing that Alonzo can do because Alicia can no longer speak. So I am going to go ahead and answer 1 and 3. I should probably ask the audience here what you think. Do you agree with that? Everybody agree with that? Okay. Thank you for that. And we're going to submit, see if we're right. Of course we're right, because I knew the answer. But not that putting the radio on is a bad thing, but it's not going to help you connect. It's just maybe something that's good to have in the background. Alonzo should instead, he should be talking to her and not assume that there is nothing that can be done because she can no longer speak. There are good ways to connect and communicate. So, communicating well with others, we're going to involve our family and friends and how we communicate with them. You want to talk about your feelings, your worries, and needs, and you want to be open and honest. Caregiving is a very tough job, and we have to think about self-care. What do we need? Do we need help for us to just have a little bit of respite? Do we need help for them? Maybe we can talk to family and have them pick up the medication from the pharmacy for us, or go grocery shopping, or maybe they can come to the house for a couple hours and help us to be able to get out and do other things to help for ourselves. Self-care is very important. So you want to have these difficult conversations when you need to, and you want to have them early, because if there are things that needs to be planned out, you want to be able to have those conversations sooner than later. That way, when you need them to jump into action, you've already had the conversation and say, hey, I could use your help today. Could you please do XYZ? But you do want to stay connected and check in regularly with each other. So tips when it comes to talking to healthcare professionals. If possible, it's great if you can go along with them to their doctor's appointments, because then you can ask the questions that you need to know. It's great to write a little journal of things that have happened at home, because the doctor's only going to get to see what happens in front of them. They also need to know what's been happening at home and at other times. I often times when I was meeting with the doctor would ask, would it be okay for me to record our conversation so I don't have to worry about taking notes and I can go back to something we talked about? Oftentimes they'll say, okay, it's always okay to ask. You want to be able to explain details, dates, how often things are happening. These are things you want to be jotting down in a journal. Take those notes, take them with you to the appointments. Think about your environment. Think about what is happening when these things are occurring. Is it happening late at night? Is it happening when the TV is on? Think about what is happening around your loved one when these things are occurring, and jot those things down. So I told you this was going to be super fast. We're going to get to some resources, and then we'll open up to Q&A, maybe some examples of what people have gone through. But the Alzheimer's Association has great resources, not only for caregivers, but for the people living with the disease. So the 24/7 helpline is the best number to go to. It's 1-800-272 3900. There are clinicians standing by available if the questions get deeper and the situation may require actual physician. There are people that can connect with deeper connections, but everybody there is trained to handle situations, to ask questions. What they usually do is walk you through the situation you're currently going through, help you through that, give you some resources, and they're always available for you if you need to come back and things have changed and you have more questions as well. I always like to send people to the website. It has a lot of information for you. ALZ.org is the first place to start, but you can go there for care information, safety, driving, when to stop driving, how to have those communications with your loved one, of when it's time to take away the keys and how to do that. Medications, treatments, they're all there as well. And then there's a alz.org /ALZ connected, as well as alz.org /ALZ navigator. And then the other two things I want to point out is the alz.org /find us. If you're calling from or joining us today from out of state or in another area, that's a great place to go to find your local chapter. We are the California Southland chapter here in LA. And then, of course, the alz.org /CRF. That stands for Community Resource Finder. It's a great resource to go to with connection and partnership with the Alzheimer's Association and AARP. You can also find other presentations, education, and topics available at the alz.org /education. So lots of great things to find on the website. And before we get to the Q&A, I just also want to point out, since we have a little extra time, some of the other ways you can be involved with the Alzheimer's Association. So as I mentioned, I have 4 roles that I'm taking as community educator, support group facilitator, advocacy, and the walk committee. There's also a new program called the Do What You Love to End Alzheimer's. So if you have an idea of maybe you want to bake cookies and sell them, that could be your fundraiser for Do What You Love. Baking a cake, having a pickleball tournament, anything you want to do, you can turn it into a fundraising event to help support the Alzheimer's Association, because all of those fundraisers, including the Walk to End Alzheimer's, well, you'll get these little flowers here, goes towards research and development, the treatment, and all of these wonderful things. The Pointer study was done with a lot of these funds, and that's a great source of information of how to prevent the disease. Of course, nutrition and activities and socializing, all these things are helpful to be able to avoid. So at that, does anybody here or online have any questions for me? I covered everything. There's no questions. Maybe share an example of what works for you when you're communicating, or something that's frustrating you. Yes, Ariel.
So sometimes with my mom, she'll repeat and she gets really frustrated. It seems like she gets frustrated that she has to repeat it. That makes sense.
Yes.
But a lot of things I do around the house, I have to make notes. So the question that she's asking, I write it down, then I have her write down the answer. So, especially like when her retirement money comes in or whatever, those things freak her out. So it's just everything just raises to a higher level, memory loss, chaos, confusion. So when she writes down, I have her write down, when is my money coming? And then we have a date, or like, when am I gonna see, my other brother? And it's just like, it's always at this date. So I just have her write down answers in her own handwriting.
Yeah.
And then, it kind of puts her mind at ease that she doesn't have to worry about it. And like,
Yeah.
Hey, something's wrong. Nothing's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very smart. And having them write it in their own handwriting is a great thing too. If that's not possible, you can make the note too. Lots of people do sticky notes. Lots of people use the calendar to write things and reminders. But it's part of the disease. It's part of what's happening in their brain. Not only are they worried that they can't remember certain things, and I'm sorry, I don't know if people online were able to hear him, but he's talking about how his mom gets frustrated and gets nervous about not being able to remember things. And when things come up that are super important, she starts to panic and have anxiety. So he had a good point of being able to have her write it down, and so that she knows in her own writing, hey, I already wrote this down. We've already addressed this. It's okay. So really, any kind of reassurance and support we can give them will help. But this is something that's going to continue to happen. And if it has happened, notate what worked, what didn't, and you can always adjust and it's a little bit of trial and error, sometimes also the time of day. Some of these things, a lot of people have sundowners and things get more complicated in the evening. And sometimes there's things that we can do to help relieve that stress. So I know I'm kind of going along with what your question started, but now I'm going on a whole tangent about it. But if you know that at 3 p.m. every day is when the change starts to happen and they start to change their mood and the behavior and they're getting more agitated. If we know this is happening every day, rather than getting frustrated about it, we could try to get ahead of it and say, okay, I'm going to at 2 o'clock or maybe at 2:30, I'm going to put some, good smelling aromatherapy in the room. I'm going to start playing some light music or whatever it is, knowing that adjustment and that behavior is going to be coming. You can try to get ahead of it. So I know I kind of went off your question, but yes, a lot of directions. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah. Yes.
Recharging her hearing.
Yes. Remember to charge your hearing aid. Notes like that.
Great. Fit in as much as possible. So
Yeah.
I have to have directions for that.
Yeah, it's really good to try to get them to charge them at bedtime because they're going to be sleeping, and then that's a good time to charge. But sometimes they may forget, and then the next day they have no hearing aid charged. So we do have a question. It looks like, oh, no, it was just, thank you, Savannah. I know she's online with us. And so I also have something from the chat is disabled. So all the questions, if anybody online does have any questions, just put it in the Q&A and we can see them there. They have disabled the chat just because it's more of a webinar. So if anybody else has questions, I have another one in the room. Yes.
My friend has a family member who has started having some, they live in a care assisted facility, so that's helpful. But the person has started moments when they will go out the door and just start wandering and, go where they used to go and retrieve the mail from the first floor. And now they sometimes hit the wrong button or get off of the wrong floor and might end up in the garage, wandering around. What is going on in situations like that? They're currently, they're looking at things, they don't recall what they are. They don't make, they're not familiar.
Yeah.
And is there any recommendation, any guidelines for something like that? Like how do you, is there any way where you could, I suppose every person's different, but where you can, by taking them down repeatedly so it becomes a very familiar environment, they might be less inclined to be completely confused.
Yeah, so for you online, the question was, what do we do about wandering? And her loved one is in a assisted living kind of community and gets confused at what floor to get off the elevator and gets confused on where to go. So with wandering, the good thing is they are in a community and, there's a lot of staff involved. That's not always the case. We may be at home and it's just us and the loved one. And so couple tips is of some sort of tracking device, whether it's a bracelet or a necklace or an air tag or their phone is helpful. But that wandering is occurring because again, their brain is getting damaged. The brain cells are being damaged and it's harder for them to process things and where they are, and they'll get confused quite often. When it comes to a big community like that, I've seen where they may have a memory case and it has a lot of their own personal photos and memories that they know, oh, this is my apartment, this is my room. Or sometimes those floors will have different colors and things like that, some visual cues to help them remember where they need to go. But there's lots of things that we need to do and adjust. And of course, having, we try to say there's no more, locked units. They can exit, but if you have that alarm, the second the door opens, those kinds of things. And there may be some things like that at home that you can do, cameras, all sorts of things. That's one of the things that are very scary for us as caregivers, but oftentimes they may be trying to get back to a place that they lived when they were a teenager. They're not always thinking in the moment where they are and where they live. They may be at home and they say, I need to get home, but they're thinking about a house that they lived when they were a teenager. So there's a lot of things going on in their brain, a lot of changes. And so it does make it very difficult, but hopefully some of those tips are helpful for you.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else online have any questions? Please feel free to put it in the Q&A so we can see that. Any other questions in the room? Thoughts, feelings, comments, hugs. We can all give each other a hug. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I hope you were able to get a little bit of information. A lot of these presentations are happening regularly, so keep an eye out on the website and any newsletters. I know Lisa's Care Connection is a great resource and sends out a lot of information for people. So, keep an eye out and hopefully you're able to get a few tips of things that I'm going to get those. Yep. From each, each thing that you find, maybe one or two things connect and might make you think, oh, I could do this. So just keep learning and keep attending different things. So we do have two more. Thank you. You already mentioned how to communicate with them during sundowning, but can you explain on some more strategies? I don't know is Savannah on here? Does she want to jump on too, or anybody else? I don't know.
I don't think she can join
Okay.
like that.
Okay, I know sometimes she likes to jump in. That's okay, I can take it. So as far as some other tips, does anybody here experience sundowning? Do you have some things that have helped you a little bit?
Just trying to emphasize earlier in the day,
Mhm.
having activities or communication.
Yep, Exactly. So one of the answers in the room was just trying to make sure that activities are happening earlier in the day. That's very helpful. Oftentimes what's happening with sundowning is their brain is just getting exhausted. And that's also maybe they need a nap or again, being more active during the day, getting more sunlight during the day will keep them up and active. And then they're able to sleep better at night when the moon is out and the melatonin needs to hit. So trying to adjust their circadian rhythm as well can be helpful. Any other thoughts or comments?
I usually try to tell her when she gets like that, oh, you said you were gonna take a nap, why don't you go take one?
Yeah, that's great. Oh, you said you were going to take a nap. Like, why don't you go take a nap when they start to get agitated like that? Now, sleep is very helpful, and sleeping soundly throughout the night is very helpful because that's when your brain is rejuvenating and it's wiping away the toxins and things that have happening throughout the day. So sleep is very important. That's one of the 10 healthy habits for your brain. Sleep. So I hope that answered a few more examples for you, George. So thank you so much for the question. And any other questions? I think we've got most of them. So again, that 24/7 helpline will help with a lot of these communication tips. If you are up in the middle of the night, doesn't matter what time of day, you're frustrated and you want to ask more questions, the 24/7 helpline is the best place to go. And they'll have a lot more tips and resources for you as well. Okay, so thank you, everybody.
Can we give a round of applause? Thank you so much. Just want to come on here towards the end and reiterate that if you as a familial caregiver need any support, like support groups, we also are very well connected with Alzheimer's Association and ALZ-LA. But we do have specific support groups that are in person, virtual for adult children, spouses, and a lot of other type of relationships. And everything that we do is for free. We do have a really great educational opportunity coming up, but there is limited spots, unfortunately. It's with UCLA and it's at the end of the month. I have some flyers here on the table. It's called the Caregiver Boot Camp. If you're interested, I can definitely talk to you a bit more about what the boot camp is. And there's some flyers, like I said, on the table.
Is it at UCLA or is it St. Joseph's?
It'll be at St. Joseph's in the Hobay conference room. And then there's also some additional programs. We have a peer-to-peer mentorship program that we have as well if you're wanting some more one-on-one support versus a support group setting. But I would just want to say thank you to Theresa again and the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you, Savannah, for helping set this up. And thank you, everybody, for attending today. All right.
Big turnout. Thank you.